Oh, here we
Oh,
go.
it works. It
Oh,
works.
sweet.
That's why they call him the Magic Man.
Let's go. Is he still here?
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
But
so we just have to leave it up like this.
we just have to leave it up like this, probably.
Okay.
But we are here. At least two-thirds of us are here. We are trying to record this episode, the 156th episode of the Belligerent Beavs Podcast. Sans our fearless leader, JP, though he might be listening to us, so we can't say anything mean about him. Though he probably was not experiencing FOMO while we were at the game this weekend because he was in Disneyland, the happiest place on earth, celebrating his and Annie's 10th wedding anniversary.
Let's go. Congrats, JP and Annie.
Congrats, JP and Annie. Happiest
place. It seemed like it was
earth.
just yesterday.
It really does seem like it was just yesterday. And we're all the same. Just as youthful, just with far more back problems and a few more mortgage payments. 10 years ago, this past weekend, we were celebrating. It was like our first friend's wedding for a lot of us.
Yeah. Hey, you were the best man in that, weren't you?
I was.
Yeah, and you had to give a speech in front of. That was a big wedding. That was not small.
I was very nervous.
But dude, I would
not nearly as much public speaking experience as I got over the next 10 years. There we go. The recording clock is still counting upwards, even though the admin box is gone. Anyway, but yes, congrats to JP, and also sorry, JP, that your whole family has COVID. It's not a very nice anniversary gift.
No, gosh, it when it rains, it pours for poor old JP. He got COVID, and then his internet went out. I feel like there was something else. Oh, he was supposed to go on a business trip this week, but obviously with COVID, he cannot.
Right. So
wishing him and his family the best, and
stay home.
Hopefully quick recovery.
Play college football 25. But we are here to unpack a lot of happy occasions. Number one being today, happy birthday, Gevani McCoy. 90% completion percentage.
Yes.
And more important than that, we met more than a handful of members of Gevani McCoy's family on the terrace on our way out of the game. Just delightful people. I don't think they thought our predictions were generous enough from the previous episode. And I agree. I don't see another loss. I don't even know if I see another incompletion after what the birthday boy put on the field on Saturday.
No kidding, man. That was it was incredible. It felt like we were in control, even though the first half got a little dicey. We'll get into it a little bit more, but it would be a disservice to call him a game manager, although he did manage the game incredibly well, made the plays that he needed to make, and man, that one dart
exactly
on ESPN's top 10.
While President Jayathi Murthy was in the broadcast booth.
Yeah.
Well done, President Murthy. We'll get into all of this. JP, if you haven't already, roll the music for this 156th episode of the Belligerent Beavs Podcast. I have a feeling that already happened. And now I retroactively look like an idiot, which is kind of the whole point of this podcast. So anyway, thank you, listener. Sorry again for this being a little bit late out of week one. We'll try to be earlier coming out of the gates for the rest of football season. But as we mentioned, we had a lot going on, a lot to celebrate, and wanted to do it right. So now we are heading into week two. Week one in the books. Got a lot to unpack after that week one, just commanding victory outside of the final 2 minutes of the first quarter. I rewatched the game today because I was very curious to see how the CW broadcast was. And have a lot of thoughts on that. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about those things. I was hoping to hear, JP experiencing it from, in person from a fan watching on TV. But, other than that, it was what you want to see, and ostensibly a week 0 game against an FCS opponent. But yeah, I was there with you and super secret producer Iskander, and I forget what the announced attendance was. It certainly wasn't capacity, but I'll say 20 some odd thousand of our closest friends.
The official numbers, I forget what the actual amount of fans that they announced was, but it was 82% to capacity, as I understand, which being there live, I wouldn't necessarily say is super accurate.
Well, we'll never, this is a purveyor of positivity. This is a love covenant.
Yeah.
This is a love forward show. So we will never go out of our way to say anything negative about Oregon State. But I will say, this as someone who has worked in sports and been around this a lot, something I have learned that many, many, many different people have taught me is that the one, inarguable, zero controversial fact in all of sports is that the attendance number is a lie. 100% of all sporting events, sellout or not, have lied about the number of people in the gates, number of tickets distributed. So I feel like this probably just added to the many, many millions of events where the attendance number wasn't all the way truthful. It's kind of like how in baseball, the first and third base coaches, you ever actually see them standing in the box?
They're supposed to stand in their box.
There's like, it's like, what's that, Dad? What are those lines? That's the box for the third base coach. Why is the third base coach standing outside those lines? Because they never stand inside the lines. I've never once seen a base coach standing in lines, and I've never seen an attendance number where I looked at and was like, yep, that's it.
Yeah, that was, and you're right. I think that's pretty well known across the board. I will say, in the defense, and let me preface it by saying that
this isn't a bitch about the
discrepancy. No, the discrepancy of fans on the new side versus fans on the old side was stark. And the old side just gets that direct sunlight, and it was hot on Saturday.
You can get new and shade or old and sun.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
Something funny the broadcast did was it kept zeroing in on parts of the student section, which are of course on the old side.
Yeah.
Murphy pointed this out. Tom Brenneman on the call pointed this out several times. Classes don't actually start for 3 weeks. So a lot of the students aren't even there. The ones who were there, shout out to you because you guys were awesome. Especially the ones standing close to the 50-yard line. That's where it gets more hardcore. The closer to midfield, the crazier, more likely. And so the camera loves the student section just in general in college football games. So it's like, even if it's sparsely attended, you can zero in. You can like get a bunch of kids to fill the frame, make it look a little bit rowdier than maybe it actually was. So it kept doing that. And it's these kids just baking in the sun. And it showed the same group of guys a few times. And by the fourth quarter, you could see all of them were a completely different shade of red when there may be a light shade of pink to start. So I was like, I hope they're wearing sunscreen. Go home and take a bath in aloe, kids. But
my God,
hey, putting it on for the Beavs, your effort was felt by the players for sure, and also by us. We respect that. But in our various tenures at Oregon State, we were in some not always the most full student sections, but always very enthusiastic to varying degrees. So I think some great stories come out of the student sections for games like this, where it's almost a month before school starts and you're playing Idaho State and none of like your friends have made the trip back to campus yet.
Yeah, well, and so I was thinking about it because you had Idaho State this week. Next week you're at San Diego State. Is it the Oregon game? That's the weekend before classes start.
It might be. I haven't looked at the academic calendar, but we even started.
Me neither.
We had first day of classes October 1st one year. That was 2008.
No.
We played.
Yeah.
we played USC in late September, and I remember like Kenny Mayne being like, he had some recap of him. It's like, and classes haven't even started yet, which made that Thursday night even more epic.
Yeah. That's right. Well, and that's what I was thinking with Oregon. It's like if classes start that next Monday, then people are already going to be there, moved in, but there are no responsibilities that weekend.
I think it'll be crazy regardless. And we're going to talk mostly about OSU, but we'll probably touch on that game that took place just a few miles down the road and why it might make people even a little bit more excited for that game in week 3, the next home game at Research Stadium. Let's do a quick beer segment, Benny.
Okay.
What do you got, if anything?
Well, it can be nothing. I mean, I stopped at good old McDonald's. Shout out Ocho Cinco.
Hell yeah.
Who does love himself McDonald's as well.
Sure
and
does.
I got a Sprite. We've talked about it before, but McDonald's Sprite slaps.
Dude, why isn't there a 3-episode Netflix documentary on why McDonald's Sprite is better than all other Sprite, really all other beverages? Because Sprite's pretty awesome on its own, but there's something about that McDonald's Sprite, dude.
It's McDonald's Sprite and then Popeye's Dr. Pepper. Those are the two that are like, they're significantly better. Popeye's Orange Fanta is pretty good too, but I've significantly better.
Soda at Popeye's a bunch. Yeah. I gotta try that. Thank you for giving me an unneeded excuse to go to Popeye's.
Yeah.
And Benny said it's the best Dr. Pepper in the world, and I had to check. I am also going with another classic on this episode. Just a lot of ice cold hams in the fridge.
Yes.
There are some other options, but my future in-laws will be staying with us starting tomorrow and there's some Modelo Especial in the fridge, and I am a big fan of Modelo, and so is my future father-in-law, and I just didn't want to be like, oh, let's have one, and then half of them are gone. Be like, what happened? Well, the episode got really out of hand, and I couldn't be empty-handed for it.
Yeah, that is a mature call.
Those are Doug's Modelo's. I'm not touching them.
Nice, great name.
But anyway,
I like Doug.
A happy birthday. Last week's QB1 and presumably this week's QB1 and number 4 of the program's number 1 in your hearts, Gevani McCoy.
Yes, cheers to Gevani, the real McCoy.
The real McCoy. Shout out to your family, Gevani, because they were very fun and
super nice.
We will be even more optimistic for the rest of the season after getting called out for it. If you keep completing 90% of your passes, we won't need to try that hard to be even more optimistic than we already were. Let's get into the game. We'll start by recapping the predictions from beforehand. All of us were off on the score. We all had Oregon State winning by more than the 23 points they ultimately won by. JP had them winning by a 45-7 final score, picked 52-7. You picked your patented full wehage of 42-14. The final score was Oregon State 38, Idaho State Bengals 15 for a final margin of 23-point victory, which didn't.
I was pretty close. I was a net score of 5 points off.
You were the closest.
Yeah.
It was, you were a weird safety and weird going for 2 away from hitting Idaho State's. But yeah, let's first we have so much to talk about, even though what's fun about these games is it's not an NFL preseason game, but I think the overarching theme that needs to be discussed here, because there are things to be, I think, either concerned about or just like, oh, that could have been better. While it's not a preseason game, it feels like it in a sense where it's just, you want to win, number one, which they did. You want to get out healthy, which they did, and somewhat coast to a victory without, to your future opponents. I don't think anyone watching that game is like, oh shit, Oregon State can run the ball. What the hell's happened? I don't know. I think, next week is when we'll kind of see the real Gundy on the offensive side. I don't think they really did any exotic blitzes. One of my frustrations a little bit with the game was just not a ton of pressure on Idaho State's quarterbacks. I think that Idaho State did. They played 4 different quarterbacks.
Yeah, I didn't realize that being
which,
there.
Which I'm glad I watched the game back because that kind of helps. Like their first guy, Jordan Cook, who came in, missed a couple of guys. Like they schemed guys open a couple of times and he missed. There were a few other just really nice plays by the defense. But that stretch where it got bad, where when safety, give them the ball, 4-play, touchdown, oh my God, we're losing. They had just put in their other quarterback, one of their many quarterbacks, Kobe Tracy, who hit their number 1 receiver, Christian Fredrickson, 3 times in a row, and then that big touchdown. So when you're playing against that many different quarterbacks, it's like, I'm sure they game planned for seeing multiple quarterbacks.
Uh-huh.
And it's usually not a good sign in a game when you're just like, all right, we're playing 3 different guys or 4 different guys under center. But it is hard for the defense to keep up with it. And yeah, I mean, like, I think that's probably the one criticism I'd have for it. But also it's like, we're not going to use our, perfect blitz against Idaho State.
Right. Well, no, and I think that is probably the most important. I know I watched some of the broadcasts. I didn't watch a full game, but one thing that I did take note of is that last year teams were able to run the ball against Idaho State pretty well. That was sort of their weakness, was their run defense. And I think that sort of tells us 2 different things. One, that Gundy took advantage of that and was able to just run it down their throats, get consistently, 5-6 yards. And that was working. So he didn't really have to open up the playbook. And I think that is a really good thing. The other thing would be that the, 300 plus yards that we put on them on the ground may be a little misleading. But also maybe not, because I mean, we were literally running the same read option on them over and over and over again. So they knew it was coming, and we were still getting 5 or 6
It's
yards.
a lot of that too. And as I was watching it today, something that I think Jam and both Hank are great at is just being really smart runners and being really tough runners. So the type of guys who, not every play is going to be the home run, but you can, and Oregon State's done this for years, is you can use running the ball as a mechanism to wear down the opponent, control the clock, win a field position battle if it comes to that. There are a lot of plays where they got smacked after, yards after contact after 2 to 3 yards, and then they turn those into 7-8 yard runs. And it will remain to be seen if those 2 to 3 yard, potentially 2 to 3 yard runs that turn into 8 yard runs against Idaho State can still be 8 yard runs against San Diego State, who's going to be a little bit better in every area probably, and against Oregon and against Purdue and so forth. So that will be the challenge. I don't think we showed any indication that there's weakness in the run game. When you run the ball that many times, what was it? 58 times to be exact. The most
Tracy.
runs since 1996. I think that's what I had from Dashel. Yeah, you're gonna get smacked at the line of scrimmage a few times. But I think it showed that, like, the instant where I don't want to focus on players who aren't here anymore, but even we were all devastated when Damian Martinez hopped in the transfer portal because we just didn't think he was going to. But instantly, a lot of us were like, this honestly will probably be like the least damaging loss in the portal, just because we've been talking about how stacked this running back room is. And I think I'm glad that we came out in week 1 and got to see Jam and Hank just show what they can be. And that's maybe the most exciting duo. This is getting ahead of myself, but because we've had some good duos, but it's almost always been someone's the 1 and then someone else is the 2 and is like a good 2. And they play so well that you have to give them some carries. We haven't really had a true just thunder and lightning, and which one's better, kind of hot hand. So this is an exciting dynamic, and I can't wait to see what Gundy does with it the rest of the
Yeah, I completely agree. They are both very different types of running backs. I was surprised. I mean, we know what we're getting with Jam, and I would argue that Jam is improved quite a bit.
I don't want to mess with the portal or other programs too much, but just a quick interject. How the fuck was that guy not getting carries at Ole Miss? Like, that is insane to me. I know they had Quishon Judkins, and I know they had other guys too, but like, to get like 3 carries all year is insane.
I don't get it. I mean, Idaho State's not SEC talent, but the running ability that Jam exhibited 2 years ago at Oregon State, I think warranted more than a handful of carries at Ole Miss. But they do run very differently, Hankerson and Jam. And I was really surprised at how tough Hankerson was. I mean, he was a wrecking ball in some of those collisions. So
he is a little bit will be interesting body type, but he kind of runs like Maurice Jones-Drew a little bit, where he's like smaller, but just a cannonball and is just bouncing off guys. It looks like it hurts to even be around him as a defensive player.
Yeah, just a very dense center of gravity for sure. But he showed his speed too. That outside zone handoff, where I guess he would have been going towards the north end zone, the end zone with the terrace. And if you're looking at the end zone, it was a run to the left. He beat the defender to the corner.
Yeah.
We had that was a DB
view of it from where we were standing at that time too.
Yeah. So he does have some speed, which was great. And that was a great vantage point that we had from the terrace there.
Sorry, go ahead.
The other thing, and this is totally stealing your thunder, but I'm going to say it anyways, is Gundy did show a willingness to pass out of the backfield, or to pass to a running back more precisely. Right. We didn't pass it a lot, but at least 2 of the 10 targets were to Jam, and they're on back-to-back plays. And I think there was more.
It got a first down.
Yeah, right.
I'm not totally fine, but also they didn't throw a single pass to the tight ends, and I'm also team weird. Get the. I'm impossible to please because I'm like, let's throw the running backs more, and also like let's work the seam game with the tight ends a little bit, but also Trent Walker should have 11 targets each game, and also run the ball constantly. It's just like, I can do this in college football 25. Why can't I do that? I think a good problem to have is every game this year that goes well, we'll look at it and be like, wow, like this guy didn't even, like Jermaine Terry didn't get a target, or like Jeremiah Noga, he had 1 catch for 7 yards. Like it'll be like someone didn't get involved. But yeah, the 2 dump offs on that, the first one didn't get the first down, and having you and super secret producer Skinder around me as that happened, where I was just like watching and like and I just heard you guys scream and grab me. We're like, we threw it to a running back. JP made the only quote by me that made it to a t-shirt was the "Show Me the Blemish" Jade Carey gymnastics shirt that we made a few years ago. Just throw it to a fucking running back for once, have the same commercial appeal as "Show Me the Blemish." I don't think so, but that's a shirt I would wear. Maybe we could make one of one just for me, as it's something I'm always complaining about. But I didn't mind it at all in this game. I think the main thing to talk about from Gundy and where he's different, they mentioned this on the broadcast, that UCLA's offense averaged 12 more offensive snaps per game last year than Oregon State's did. And it's not surprising that teams would average more offensive snaps than Oregon State, as the running game's the identity. And it was like last year was very much DJ make plays where there are plays to be made, and get the ball to Dame, get the ball to Fenwick, and kind of let the defense seal the deal. Playing slow a little bit. The moments where we showed tempo didn't really show a ton, but just the fact that they did it, a lot of times it was, and there's a few possessions like this where it was run up the middle or like run off tackle, then run up the middle. And it was about 3rd and short. And then Jam or Hank would get the first down on like an explosive, like 12-yard run. And then we would go no huddle and hurry up and try to get a play off on first down. And none of those, I don't believe really a lot. And then a lot of times they'd stop and they'd like look to the sideline and they'd change the play or whatever. But I think this is maybe a kind of best of both worlds scenario where it's not going to be a full no huddle offense. But like there were times like last year and even in years before, especially when we like never really had a mobile quarterback or at least like a huge run threat quarterback where it was like, okay, we got these guys on the ropes, but then we're still bleeding as much of the play clock as possible, not really capitalize on the momentum. And I think Gundy has an approach that's trying to merge both of those schools of thought together. And I think we could see some really cool plays from that. And I don't think that was necessarily a tell. I think it was just like, when this happens against Idaho State, we're going to do that and we're going to work on this. But we're going to try to have more offensive snaps per game this year. And that's something that I think the fan base has been thirsting for. One of maybe the few criticisms of Jonathan Smith before he ended up leaving, and there weren't many criticisms to throw at the guy. So yeah, that was something I noticed and something that I saw other people noticing.
Yeah, I think we did get a taste of what the offense will look like without getting sort of the whole meal there. It's, to me, it seems like Gundy's going to be running a lot of options, whether that's RPOs or read options. I hope some speed options. I think that you could really take advantage of that specifically.
Have you
DM'd
him how successful you've been with the speed option in your college?
I'm averaging like 40 yards a play in college football 25, Ryan.
Right.
Yeah,
You'll listen to you. You both went to Central Catholic, so it's a brother.
Yeah. No,
Rams.
it is. It's a tight knit group. It feels like we're playing to our strengths for once, or maybe playing to the strengths that I like for once, which is speed.
Right.
And I love that. We talk about the sort of thunder and lightning with the running backs. But you look at let's say you have Jam in there, and you have, David Wells Jr.
Right. Who we need to talk about.
Lightning fast. We do have to talk about him. Trent Walker is lightning fast. We didn't see Darius Clemens in there, but he is fast as well.
Early reports seem to indicate that Clemens will play on Saturday in San Diego.
That's good news. But you just have all the speed. And I saw a lot of plays that were misdirection. We talked about the read option, and I think that was misdirection for the first quarter, maybe first 2 quarters. It wasn't misdirection for the third and fourth quarter, because that ball was not going to be in the hands of Gevani McCoy. It was definitely going to the running back. So, but I think even on that touchdown pass to David Wells, you had some not trickery, but just misdirection with. Right. With the fake end around there.
They'd been ground down by the run game at that point too. And it's just
they had.
I think we'll see a lot of games like this where it's like first quarter maybe leads something to be desired, but conditioning and all that stuff comes into play, and you can see that we were the stronger, tougher, fitter team as we ran away from things in the third and fourth quarter.
And I think you really, really saw why Gevani was the guy that they chose, because when you have specifically RPOs, but even doing read options too, right? Like, you have to have a very good understanding of what you're looking at. And Jabari is you just can't have that by sitting on a bench your only year in college and having really your only live snaps be in high school. So I think Jabari is in the ideal spot right now,
right,
where he's coming in. Hopefully we'll see a little bit more of him at San Diego State. But you really do understand, like, Gevani has all that experience. He's shown to be successful. And man, I didn't watch the whole game on TV, but from what I saw being there live, he was making the right read every single time when it came to those RPOs. So Yeah, it was really, really cool to see. I think it's an offense that Gevani can really thrive in.
Right.
For
And
sure.
it'll be interesting to see how they use Jabari going forward. I was careful to note the series they did give him was the first series of the second quarter. I don't know if that will be his earmarked series, as the third series last year was earmarked for Aiden Childs.
Yeah.
I think they'll probably play things by ear, which I think is the smart way to do things. No game is made the same. Operate on a case-by-case basis is only logical. But I would, after seeing the double spin move run by Jabari that I thought was gonna go to the goods, until that Idaho State player made a very nice open field tackle to ruin our good time there. But that was a really nice play. It was good to see him. What could have been a pretty nice touchdown pass to Trent Walker that I feel like it's your first time throwing deep in a game. Like, it's easy to be a little trigger happy.
Yeah.
Trent's fast. He's not that fast. That's not Usain Bolt out there.
So that ball was, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just like that. It's better that he's getting his first throws in against Idaho State than against San Diego State or against anyone else. So yeah, I liked seeing him out there. But we should talk about the play to David Wells Jr., because that was sort of where, like, it felt like this sort of disastrous end to the first quarter had been stymied a bit by the second quarter, where we scored on 2 possessions. We didn't give up any points. And it was like, all right, this is dumb. Us losing to Idaho State's not going to happen. This isn't Sac State or Eastern Washington all over again.
Right.
But, being up 17-9 at halftime just doesn't feel very good. And I will add, that was a thing that was kind of happening across the country. Our upcoming opponent, San Diego State, was losing to Texas A&M Commerce 6-3 at halftime. Before scoring 42 unanswered points, as opposed to our 24 unanswered points, which don't look quite as good now. But for them to call the play in which they did, for Gevani to uncork that deep ball to David Wells Jr. for a 55-yard touchdown, which I believe got a tweet out of Ocho Cinco that simply read, "David Wells Jr. bitch."
Yeah.
Which,
so good.
If we get an expletive tweet from Ocho every week this season, that tells me that he's on the Oregon State bandwagon in this new realignment era, and that beast in him has been awoken. People have.
We were in the Hilton Garden Inn, in our room at the Hilton Garden Inn, and I was on Twitter, and I saw that tweet come through, and that was such a good feeling to know that I was going to say it immediately, and I knew the reaction that I was going to get out of you, which was the reaction I got out of you, was just an explosion of laughter. But that was awesome to see. Chad very clearly was watching the game, which is always nice.
He was on.
I think there's a lot of excitement.
He got closer than you did in the predictions. He predicted 38-12.
That's right. Yeah.
Come on the pod for a prediction segment, Chad. Come on, man.
Yeah. We'll
gotta
have you
do
anytime. But that play was really incredible. And I think, you look at, first of all, Idaho State's defense on that play was very good.
Right. They're in position, but
they were in position on some misdirection that I think for most teams would have pulled the safety. And I think it was the corner, that it would have pulled them in. But they stayed in position, and I mean, clearly the throw was silky smooth. I mean, you could not have placed that ball in any better of a spot than what Gevani did. I mean, he was throwing into double coverage.
Right. He put that on a rope.
He put it on a rope, and it was a 50-yard line drive pass. It was pretty impressive to show off his arm strength. But the catch too, that's not an easy catch.
No,
I mean, that was it because it was thrown in the only position that it could have been. It was really an outstretched catch by David Wells Jr. there.
And catch where you see a receiver running really fast but the ball is also moving really fast. And you can see the momentum of the ball making David Wells Jr. move faster as it hits his hands.
Yeah.
I would love to see the speedometer because I think it went up a tick, and then he was able to keep his footing. I think it was just one more step that he needed before he could his momentum tumble forward into the end zone.
Yeah.
But perfect play. And I love Murphy on the broadcast. If you've watched the highlight, it was probably the CW's footage. But she had just got there, and Brenneman was asked if this was not to keep bringing up old shit. But remember years ago when Brenneman was issuing his apology, and it was and that'll be a deep drive to left by Castellanos, and it's a home run. He was he was asking a question to Murphy as the ball got snapped, and then realized he needed to stop his line of questioning and talk about the play happening because it was a deep shot. And it was as Oregon State is going to try to hit the home run here, and they do. It was a beat for beat equivalent of his most famous and unfortunate soundbite when he's and that's the deep drive to Castellanos. And Murphy, just unflappable, was that was my doing, don't you think?
So good.
Yeah. It was really funny.
And that was the loudest that the crowd got. I think that was the moment where it was, you really felt like that was the final nail in the coffin.
That was right? We were playing with our food, and then it was all right, we're done.
Yeah.
We're done playing. And I'm glad they did it too, because it was a lot of it was for Gevani. It was dink and dunk, short yardage stuff. And honestly, just look to the people we hate most a few miles down the road. They showed how incredible an offense can be without throwing it super far on a lot of plays with Bo Nix last year. So, and many other teams do that too. That was kind of how the original West Coast offense was fashioned, was just high percentage shots in basketball. You get guys this cowardly Iowa offense relying on crossing routes.
Horrible.
The deepest reference we'll get on this podcast.
Yeah.
If anyone who listens to the Shutdown Fullcast, please let us know. They're inspirations every day. But when you have especially receivers who you can scheme open, especially we got a lot of fast guys too. I thought Reddick's in his 2 touches looked really silky, a real threat. And I've said this years and years of watching football, when you have receivers like this, and it's have them go deep all the time and try to hit the home run. Hitting home runs is fun, but hitting singles and watching Kenny Lofton steal second and third is fun too. Let those guys run with the ball in their hands. We don't get any points for them running without the ball in their hands. What are we doing?
The one that he almost broke was Jabari's pass, right?
Yeah.
It was a bullet.
It was Jabari's first pass, and it was a good throw by Jabari. And
it was a good throw.
It was already a first down, and then Taz just showed what he can do to make guys miss to get yards after the catch. I can see that guy just being a yak machine. And I hope they manufacture more touches for that. I feel like our takeaways from this is here are 9 guys on offense. We give them the ball, and we haven't even talked about Saladin Allah yet. The cupboard is not bare. And I think maybe the biggest thing that just for the fans that this past Saturday gave, even though it wasn't a perfect game and it wasn't kind of the runaway scoreline that people wanted, even though I would still call it a commanding victory, is it reminded people that we have really talented, young and fun student athletes on this team, where the offseason narrative has been about who's leaving, who's elsewhere, who found greener pastures. Everyone hates Oregon State and you're being left for dead for a reason. And then you watch all of these kids play, and then you see 2 guys one running back go for 160, another running back go for 155, and then the true freshman out of Texas. Do we usually do well with running backs from Texas?
You've been known to do all right with them.
Especially running backs below the Mason-Dixon line. I think that plays into your baseball rule,
yeah.
Benny.
Yeah, no, that's a legit call out.
I know it's the fourth quarter and Idaho State is gassed at that point, but you're the third string running back. You're a true freshman, and Saladin Allah goes for 59 on 7. It's gonna be so. Gundy has a very difficult job, and they're all the right problems to have.
What most excited you about the offense? Like either specifically a player. Let's go there.
Let's go. Okay.
What player excited you most on offense?
Ooh, it's hard to do a single player.
What about a position?
I'd say I would say Gevani, because I think he was just kind of working with like the first 8 pages of an 800-page playbook. And there's a way for him to be on course. I think the offensive line is going to be better than people thought it was going to be. I think
me too.
Moving Gray from left tackle to left guard is something we'll keep monitoring. I initially kind of thought it was them doing right by him because every NFL person projects him as a guard at the next level. So it is helpful for him to get those snaps at left guard, and that there's no moving him inside. He'll already have 12 more starts on top of now his 44 starts he had coming in. But Lichtenhan looked awesome on the edge at left tackle. Seeing a 6'9", 330 body in pads on the field in person, even when you're watching it from afar, is a terrifying sight. I don't think there's a more intimidating player. Certainly that we'll see. So to answer your question, I will say Lichtenhan, actually, because I thought he played a very good game. And I think moving Gray's going to be an All-American level player wherever he is. And so I think the left side is very solid, even with the type of talent we have and with a future NFL player who I believe we have in Gray. If Lichtenhan is even close to what we've seen so far, I think we'll have one of the better running games in the nation, because it's, even when you know it's going left, it's hard to stop.
Yeah. And
also it looks pretty good to the right. One observation I'll share with you that I thought was interesting, and I think this is me reaching for something. It could be total happenstance. Both Hankerson's touchdowns went to the left, and both of Jam's went to the right. And that's a small sample size. They both got far more than just the 2 carries apiece that they scored on. But I will, I was kind of trying to pay attention while we're at the game then a little bit more, just to see like tendencies, like how are Jam and Hank different from each other. Like Hank has a little bit more meat on him. Jam might have a little bit more like shift or wiggle or twitch or whatever weird football buzzword you want to use for him. But yeah, that was just something that I noticed. And after like sort of unpack, I like rewatched all of our scoring plays. So I think the right side of the line is pretty strong too. But yeah, one player, I got to go with Gevani, because I think he's the type of quarterback that we haven't had in a while.
Yeah, I would second that. I think Gevani, but for maybe a different reason. Like the one thing that stood out to me, or that I'm pretty sure I've called it out on the pod, is the offense is going to be made or broken by this wide receiving group. And I say that because there's a ton of talent there, but they're really young. And so what I wanted to see was how were they going to be on the same page with Gevani? And I think it's one thing to get open. That I was not worried about that with Idaho State. I think, like Idaho State's defense was not particularly good in the FCS last year, so I wasn't worried about them getting open. But how was that connection going to look with Gevani? Were they going to be on the same page? And especially with these read options or RPOs, run pass options, you have to be on the same page with your receivers. And they were. I mean, you had mentioned Taz, David Wells Jr. Had that great catch, but there was one incompletion. Granted, small sample size, but that shows me that these receivers and Gevani are on the same page,
right?
And that's huge.
And not to throw Trent under the bus, but Trent would tell you this: that absolutely should have been caught. Gevani's one incompletion was a drop in his breadbasket that would have been like another 30-35 yards.
And that was the one where, he had to come back to it. He come back like it could have been pass interference, but
it looked like I think it was Jaden Davis, their safety. Full speed, it looked like he got a hand on it. Then I watched the replay, and I think it was just a drop. But still, I mean, like, rather that happen now than next week, definitely 2 weeks from now or any of the weeks down the road. And I think Trent would say the same thing. But he didn't have. They didn't unleash a crazy, arsenal of throws, but every single throw he hit.
Yeah.
He wasn't
and
missing.
There weren't any misunderstandings where, he's like, you should have gone in when you went out, or you should have cut at 10 yards and not 15. Like, everyone was on the same page. And that doesn't, I mean, you can be not on the same page against a bad offense that's allowing you to get open. And so that, I think that's more telling than anything else on the offense was that relationship between quarterback and receiver seemed to be really, really strong.
Can I nerd out about something real quick?
Do it.
Get very nerdy. Nerdier.
Do it.
Not quite as nerdy, but the same level as nerdy as what happened when we were leaving the OSU Beaver store. When I told you in Skins, I'm wearing this on my sleeve because I'm proud of who I am. I got a new shirt. I got a flag for my house. I got jerseys for my niece and nephew. And I think you guys were both still like looking for stuff. It was early. We got there like right after it opened. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go get in line. And as I'm walking to the line, I walk to the part of where it's not just the Beaver store, but the bookstore. And there's a big sign for academics. And I see like, what first got me was the Oregon State branded 2024-2025 academic planners. And that's not the nerdiest detail about it. And then I walked further and further into the like academic textbook section and then into the English aisle. It's very well organized. It's a very well organized college bookstore. So shout out to Oregon State. Of course, it's Oregon State brags about everything it does on and off the field for a reason. Very, very organized thing. And I went into the English department aisle and looked at all the books the English teachers were assigning. And then I turned after a while and saw you and Skits were like checking out after I had told you I was already going to the line. But yeah. And also, what I can tell you from that is the reading list for English 104 this fall is fucking lit.
It's so lit. Is it just fucking fire?
The only one I remember from the top was Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut, which is a great book. But anyway, I ran fast and then I mentioned it to you. Fast forward hours later, there was less than 5 minutes left in the third quarter when there was a first accepted penalty against Oregon State in the game. So I was very happy with the lack of penalties. They got some more after that, and there was a couple offsetting before that, so it wasn't like totally clean. But also, big fat goose egg, 0 procedural penalties in the whole game. How many times in the history of this podcast, even after wins, where it's been like, oh man, Terry is going to get on his soapbox about these pre-snap unforced errors. There were none.
Scared.
There were none. There were no pre-snap unforced errors. That didn't happen once in the Smith era. I should say error because everything about that man's an error. But there were none. No false starts. No delay of games. No illegal shifts.
Man, it was a clean
That's what gets
game.
me excited. I see your 55-yard dart to David Wells Jr., and I raise you no false starts.
I would also say that now there is an asterisk next to it, but no turnovers. They're snapping it into the back of the end zone.
Jam fumbled before.
That's not right.
I'm very sorry. It was
I
right
feel
after
dumb.
I
You're
found
right.
you. I came down from the press box, found you in the terrace, and then we found Funky Paul Molina, and we were driving, and then the next play, Jam fumbled.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, and that sucked because we had like a 70-yard drive before that. But there are
Yeah.
no turnovers
That's
other than
right.
that, and I mean, snapping the ball I guess it is it's not
It's not
really
a turnover.
No, the
No, it's
snap out
not.
of the
That
end zone.
doesn't go in
I
the
will
stats as a turnover.
if I wanted to
It
be a
is.
real asshole and complain about stuff, because like I just take it upon me to complain about stuff because I want at least someone on this podcast to complain about stuff.
No,
But
I'm here. I have something to complain
so
about.
Everett Hayes's first extra point was good, but I was like, did that just go over the crossbar by like an inch? And I think it got deflected. It still went in, which is good. And Everett's a great kicker, so I'm not worried about that. But then there was the snap out of the end zone for the safety. It was a fun on the broadcast. Max Brown, who is the color guy. The play before that was Noga's catch that like gave him a little bit more room. And he's like, oh yeah, I mean, doesn't get the first down, but good read by McCoy to get more yards, give your punter more room, not have to worry about a safety here. And then the next play is just a snap that I think did hit the wedge of blockers who were just in the wrong spot and deflected. And it got more speed off the deflection. And it goes into the end zone and out of bounds. And Brown just goes, well.
That was it.
I was like, I want more honest broadcasting like that, where it's like every other network, it would be trying to explain like, yeah, well, my logic on the previous play was still right because they got more reaction and it happened. It's like, yeah, we say, yeah, there's no way. You didn't outright say now there's no way there'll be a safety, but it's like, oh yeah, prevent anything weird happening in the end zone. And something very weird did happen in the end zone.
Yeah.
With the ball hitting the up back and deflecting out and giving Idaho State their first 2 points of the game, which translated to them taking the lead for a brief few minutes where everyone at Reeser was horrified and furious in 90
and so scared
and so sunburned.
It's so sunburned. Except us, because we got the SPF 50.
We did.
We reapplied it on Saturday.
We had several applications of that SPF 50. But
so is it the long snapper that scares you? Because that was going to be my sort of.
So following that, the field goal that was good, Josh Green had to make a hell of a hold to make up for the snap.
That's right.
Everything for the rest of the game, and I didn't rewatch the fourth quarter with like the same close eye. So I mean, the point after was good, but I didn't like look at the snap and look at the snap angle and anything like that. It looks to improve throughout the game. So I'm hoping that this is the first time you guys are doing this as a trio in a game and that can be fixed. But it showed that there are a lot of special teams kinks to work out.
Yep. Yeah.
So,
well, and I also think that we would be remiss if we didn't say like, Idaho State is supposed to finish in the bottom tier of the Big Sky.
They were 3-8 last year.
And
they do. I'll say at least in terms for their offense, they had the number one passing offense in FCS last year, which was but it combined with the 101st rushing offense in FCS last year. But a lot of these guys were part of that, so maybe this could be a move up for them. I think them moving the ball doesn't worry me because we closed down on those. And like in the second half, we gave up only 123 yards total in the second half. It was when we were like, all right, let's shut this down. We shut it down. And we're not using the most exotic coverages or exotic blitz packages. So Idaho State having these drives where they got some first downs and no points, that doesn't worry me at all. It worries me if there's not a next level with some of this and with some of our corners who did get beat deep and the play just didn't come together for it to turn into a big game for Idaho State. But I think that's something that will just play out over time. But I'm not worried about the defense.
Okay. All right. Well, I think I think specifically when it comes to the running game, that's sort of where I look at and I say, okay, like we have two guys that are in the top. What'd you say? Top
They're
10?
both in the top 10 individually.
Yeah, for rushing yards, at least last week
per game.
because I think there were a number of running backs that had
The
already
teams
had
that
two
have played
games.
twice have had, a couple big runs. But
Yeah,
someone
so
above them, all right, I'll let you finish your thought
well,
here.
I was just gonna say when you're playing a school that really struggled with rushing defense last year in a division below yours, I don't know how much weight you can put into that. I think Hankerson and Jam are both very, very good, and I'm very excited to watch them this season. But that's where I would only urge people to maybe tamper expectations a little bit. Or just be aware of the fact that this is probably the worst run defense that we're going to face this year.
Yeah,
probably.
That's fair.
Yeah,
that's definitely fair. On great running backs, especially who are in the top 10 and above both Hankerson and Griffin, though I think if it was just one of them in the Oregon State backfield, I think they could be leading Division I in yards right now. But San Diego State's Marquez Cooper rushed for more than 220 yards against Texas A&M Commerce. So we won't be the only one with talented running backs on the field. San Diego State will look different than how they've looked in the past. They're led by freshman quarterback Danny O'Neill, and he had a decent week last week as well. It's also hard to really glean much from a blowout victory against Texas A&M Commerce. I think it might say a little bit that they struggled in the first half a bit more than we did. But also, I don't want to say we didn't struggle in the first half, particularly the first quarter. So yeah, I don't know what I want to revisit the predictions we laid last week. And we're going to do this every week where we revisit the previous predictions. JP had Oregon State winning, the only one predicting 2 possessions, but winning by 28-17. You had 28-24. I had 21-16. And seeing that both teams will probably try to run the ball a lot, and we can't really tell much about either defense, I think JP wants to call this bet or bail on the previous prediction. I'm betting on mine. I still like OSU 21, San Diego State 16. I think that's kind of going to be, it's always interesting when both teams want to run similar tempo, and that tempo is a bit slower. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think that is in hand with what could actually play out at Snapdragon Stadium next Saturday night.
Yeah, I'm going to bet with mine too. I think 28-24 sounds about right. I will say if Gundy opens up the playbook, which I really hope that he doesn't have to, but he might. And if he does, I could see this offense exploding. But I don't think that is going to be what the game plan is. I mean, you treat every game like it's your last, right? And so I don't think that Gundy's holding back necessarily for Oregon, but I do think that there is some understanding, like forward looking, that look, Oregon, and we talked about it over the weekend, Oregon has more talent than Oregon State. That's just like facts, right? The talent is there. It's what you can do with it. So, the Oregon, you know what you're going to get. You know the type of plays that they're going to run. If Gundy can keep a veil over the playbook as much as he can at San Diego State, it gives you that much more of an edge against your rival and clearly the best opponent that you're going to be playing all season. And I think there has to be some of that taken into consideration. So I do think that Gundy is going to try to run the ball as much as he can. I think we'll see a couple wrinkles in there that we didn't see against Idaho State, but for the most part, I think you're going to see a lot of read options. I think you're going to see hopefully a few more RPOs. But that's pretty much what you're going to see against San Diego State. What I'm really interested in seeing is Oregon State has just traditionally struggled on the road so much. And, a lot of the coaches that had been here the last couple of years are no longer here. A lot of the players that were here the last couple of years are no longer here. So it is a different team, and it's led by a different group. So you would think that those sort of weird anomalies would leave with those people.
You'd hope.
You'd hope, but sports is a weird thing, and those have a weird way of sticking around. So I think this is going to be a really big test for Bray. I think it's going to be a really, really big test for Gevani, because Gevani was only recently named the starter, and it's one thing to come out and be that offensive leader at home in a stadium that, I mean, you and I talked about, that was probably one of the more dead stadiums that I've seen Reeser be in a really long time, and totally valid reasons as to why. But I think that makes it a little bit easier to come in as the new quarterback and sort of, be able to be the leader. It's a lot different on the road. And so this is going to tell us a lot about the team. But I think, again, like Gevani having all this experience at Idaho and being able to work out some of these things and knows what it takes to be a leader on a team. That's where I have full faith, and that's where I'm really excited to see where this team can go, because I think you have all the pieces in place that allow you to sort of extinguish that sort of bugaboo that has been following us these, not last couple years, last decade or so.
Right. That's interesting too, because winning on the road in football in general, running game is a great way to do it with. Shout out running backs coach Thomas Ford Jr., who probably had one of the best position weeks ever at Oregon State, when you have one running back go for 160, another one go for 155, and as we mentioned, your third guy go for 59 on 7. And don't forget about Jake Reichel, who only got one touch and converted it turned it into a first down. So
yeah, that's right.
All four guys, meaningful touches, meaningful snaps, positive yards, positive plays.
I think honestly, so real quick on the running back room, what Saladin showed, I think, was like low-key most exciting. Was low-key most exciting because of it. Like, I want to see him get more touches as the season goes on, but running back seems like it's the position where people are getting injured the most. So if Jam or Hank go down, like, you have somebody that you can plug in there, and you're going to be able to rely on them. So I feel like that's so important to have that third person on the running back chart be someone that you can reasonably rely on. And I think Saladin showed us that.
Yeah, for sure. You do realize the spread came out for this game, and I have them winning by 5. You have them winning by 4, and the spread is 4.5. So
yeah,
are you not betting on Oregon State to cover now? Because you said bet on your prediction. Are you going to up it to a point?
Well, I don't know how that would work with the flow of the game unless somebody went for 2. I feel comfortable with my original bet. I think it's going to be close. I think, and I don't think it's going to be a full touchdown. I think it's going to be a last-second field goal, or it's going to be close.
Vegas knows all. So putting that at Beavers 4.5. And just splitting the difference between our two calls from a week ago is only appropriate. What uniform combination do you want to see this week?
Oh man, I would love to see the all whites, white pants, white top, and white cursive script. I don't ever want to see another helmet than that cursive script helmet. Dude, those uniforms.
Not old school Benny, not one of the black helmets.
Nope.
You love the cursive script so much.
Oh man, didn't it look so good? I haven't seen Oregon State look that good on the football field. I haven't seen Oregon State that look that good on the football field in a really long time.
You were so excited. You like screamed in the hotel room, and I was like, "What's happening?" And I was like, "Is someone dead? What's going on?" And you were like, "We're wearing the cursive script helmets."
I was very, very excited.
You've been
about
asking for a long time, probably even longer than before we started this show.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, the cursive script helmets, look, I get there are people out there that want nothing to do with anything related to the 1970 through 1998 season. I get it. I was born into a Beaver family in 86. So sort of those years when I was discovering what it meant to be an Oregon State fan, they were rocking those unis. So I get the bad memories they bring back, but man, they are undeniably sick. They just look so sharp.
They looked really good last week.
Mm-hmm. I thought they were only going to wear them with the white tops and white bottoms, but the black tops and black bottoms with the white cursive script, that looked way better than I thought.
You want white script, white.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or white script, orange top, white pants. I'd be cool with that too.
I think I'd do white top and orange pants. But that's also because
if you had the cursive script, I would be cool with that.
You know what I want? I want black helmet, white jersey, orange pants. Because of the Steven Jackson football card that I got when I was
want that.
What, 14, 15? I hadn't even considered Oregon State as a school I might go to yet. So we'll see.
Is that his like rookie card?
Yeah, it was like the draft class card. But it was nice. Like it had Rams on it, but it was like the college pictures. So
yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, but that was one of my prized ones because I did, that was kind of how I didn't know, because I know Jackson was on the Fiesta Bowl team, but he didn't play that much. I think the first time I really considered Oregon State was the Fiesta Bowl team, and watching them beat the shit out of Notre Dame. It was around the holidays, so I was like in Milwaukee with my cousins, and a couple of them are Michigan fans, so they hated Notre Dame. So they were just like wildly celebrating. So that was like when I was like really getting into like watching football. I was 12 and then, spending perfect weekends alone in the basement doing Madden franchises and importing draft classes from NCAA and drafting players and stuff. So that was when, I really, really started to, respect the Beavs, and then I came to school here because of that. So yeah, we'll see. I wonder what day they announced what they're wearing, because it was like the day before.
I think they did it. Was it the day before or the day of? Maybe it was the day before.
Right.
Yeah, it was the day. It was the day before. It for sure was the day before. Do you have anything else on the football game?
I mean, congrats to Trent Bray.
I have something else on football.
First win in Trent Bray's career. I feel like we got to say that. I think in these games, if you're like looking for things to take away from, I think, our friend Yogi Roth, who is just everywhere now, will always talk about the middle eight. And I thought that was a big key for us. We were really good in the last 4 minutes of the first half and first 4 minutes of the second half. I think that's kind of a big thing in any sport, and showed that Bray knew what the fuck he was doing going into this. Shout out Keith Hayward, a first game back as the DC. I would like to reaffirm my enthusiasm for Taz Reddix. I get that I can't ask for every single player on the team to get the ball more. So I think I'm adopting Reddix as my player to ask for that. But I would like to see the tight ends just as a group get involved next week, and I think we will see it. I don't know how many games it would be interesting to see if Gundy will just be like, I'm going to go as far into the season as possible without throwing to the fucking tight ends. Maybe a tight end wronged him at one point down the way. Maybe like Joe Newton pulled a prank on him back in the day or something like that, and this is his revenge. I don't know. But so I guess I'm interested in hearing a couple more, because we love predictions. After one game, Who leads this team in rushing for the whole season?
You mean after one more game?
No, at the end of the season, who do you think will be the leading rusher?
Oh, man, dude, that's so tough.
It's literally impossible.
I think it will be Jam, because I get the feeling that this team is going to go like heavy on speed. I think that they're going to rely a lot on speed, and Jam sort of fits that bill a little bit more.
He might be,
but
if there's any 90-yard runs to be had, it's probably Jam. But
it will be, yeah. But I mean, the counter to that is Hankerson is the counterpunch. Right. So and the defense is sort of unaware of it.
I'll say Jam leads in rushing yards. Hankerson leads in all-purpose yards. And I also wanted to ask you who will be the leading receiver.
I think Darius Clemens. And that was, I'm glad you asked, because that was the last sort of thing on Oregon State football that I did want to talk about. Was if we come out of San Diego State, the thing that's going to excite me the most, that could excite me the most, is if Darius Clemens has like 150-yard receiving day.
I would take any 100-yard receiving game. That would really excite me.
Yeah, for sure.
Any
but I
individual
think
over 100 receiving yards, I think would be a great sign.
And I don't think that it would be a fluke for any one of them, because Taz, Trent, David, they all really showed out. And they showed that they had a lot of talent. But I think Darius Clemens has just that it, because is he 6'4", 6'3"?
He walked by me when we were down on the field, and he's quite a bit taller. Most of these guys are quite a bit taller, quite a bit bigger, quite a bit more impressive. I don't think he's 6'4", but he's remember?
Yeah, I do remember.
How tall is Anthony Gould? He's taller than Champ Flemings. How tall is Darius Clemens? He's taller than Champ Flemings. But yeah, he was he was an impressive looking guy. I didn't think he was super tall, and usually 6'4" receivers feel super tall, so I don't think he's that tall. Our lads has him at just 6'1", which I think makes sense. Also, in addition to height,
he has the most height. He has the most
height is always a lie too. So who knows how tall anyone is? But he's true. He's not Randy Moss out there, but he's also not Champ. He's closer to Randy Moss than he is Champ Flemings, though.
Yeah, and I think like I probably buy into the hype stuff a little bit more than you or JP. Like that just really excites me. And
I love hype.
Darius has. I know, but
he's got that sauce. He's got the juice.
I get hypnotized by
you actually majored in hype at Oregon State.
I did. Yeah. Straight A student too. Yeah, I don't know. I think if Darius can get 100, if he can have 100-yard game and a touchdown, like that would be really exciting, because then you have some other players who can just burn the cornerbacks.
Right.
I mean, Trent and Wells, like both of them have elite speed. And so if you can have a receiver that has a little bit more size, be able to also show out, I mean, you just have so many options for Gevani. And then you're back in a position where you're just kind of like Silas who? Damian who? DJ who? Like, and that was the last thing that I wanted to talk about. And I think that there is a fine line here is I'm not cheering against anyone. And I don't want to tell our listeners
one person I'm cheering against.
Is it Atticus?
No, he plays for Oregon, so yeah. So I guess then two.
Yeah,
I am.
Well, I mean,
I am cheering against Jonathan. And
for sure.
I am.
I was saying like not a player,
and it's that the players who aren't here. You know, I don't want to make this a habit where we talk about the players who aren't here all the time, but it is the first week. It's hard not to pay attention to that. Everyone was kind of asking about it, like, what are these guys' stats? What are they doing when we were at the game? So I get it.
And I think I'll start off by saying, like, I feel really bad for DJ. He is in a position that I think is a lot worse than the position at Oregon State. I think he's being coached worse, as difficult as that is for me to say, given who his coaches were last year.
There's apparently no communication between him and Jonathan when Smith left.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it's right. And that is part of why I will actively root against DJ. And I do wish him well. I hope he has a good season, because of, for those of you that have not heard this, Big Dave, DJ Uiagalelei's father, was on an Oregon State Spaces that was hosted by Digital Dam. Yeah. So Digital Dam had a Spaces on Twitter or X, and Big Dave was just talking about DJ's or more so Jonathan Smith's exit, and just how poorly he executed that, and how he didn't tell DJ, like, until it was until I ended up being the night before the Oregon game, but how he also didn't wish him well or didn't call him after he left, or like nothing.
He used the words checked out, and as used the words checked out before the Oregon game, and it's far from the first time we heard that. And there's a number of mistakes, and I don't want to throw the terms unforgivable or anything around. I just know he's always going to be a villain just because of the way these things, turn out. And I'm not particularly interested in any potential redemption arc that there could be. And I don't think he is either. And I don't, but like, we have heard from people who we are inclined to believe and who have no reason to lie to us that he was checked out before the Oregon game, and essentially pretty much right after the UW game. And for that, I think you have a responsibility to your guys, you have a responsibility to your school and to your fans. And I think that being checked out before the final conference rivalry game with Oregon, during a year where you preach just like, we're going to be locked in and not talk about this at all, like it's not even there, it doesn't affect us. Whereas, on the Palouse, we got to hear Jake Dickert be like a cheerleader for all things Wazoo.
Yeah, we deserve to be a Power 4 school.
That just made it seem like, this was always just a trade chip to get to the next thing for you.
And that's what Big Dave said too.
And it had an effect on the psychology of the players he was responsible for coaching. So if that's what you want to think about, then I think that's fine. I think maybe DJ just kind of got a little bit unlucky with the destination. I kind of knew he was going to leave, and I don't think the draft was the smartest thing for him this year. And then this past draft, and then this next draft actually is going to be way thinner at the quarterback position. So if you wanted to try and work your way up, it would have been easy.
He's going to have to show a lot.
He's going to have to show a lot, but which he still could. But the way things are looking at Florida State right now, it's not looking great. And I don't think it's his fault. And I think I don't know. It was hard because of if Smith stayed, I don't know if he comes back because of Childs, is like assuming Childs stays too, but it's that's all messy. But I have nothing but love for DJ and hope he can turn this thing around.
Yeah, I do too. The others, obviously, like the high profile names being, Damian Martinez. I don't think he had a bad game. No. His team had a great game. Cam Ward had a great game. But I don't think that Dame is going to be in any talks of, All-American or, at this point, like even conference first team in a pretty depleted ACC. So, that was not a great showing for Dame at all. We talked about it on the ride home from Corvallis. Dame had under 65 yards one time since he became the starter his freshman year at Oregon State. And that was the game that Jonathan Smith gave up on the team at Oregon. He had 38 yards.
With the exception of that Vegas Bowl where he got hurt right away.
Oh, yeah. Right. Good point.
But still.
And then
not a lot of times where he wasn't part of the offense guaranteed and needing to get more than 65 yards.
And he didn't get over 150 yards last year in any game. And we had 2 running backs that got that last game. So that looked pretty. And then Aiden Childs, man, like that, I thought Aiden was going to go off.
They looked like shit. They honestly did.
Dude, I love
Aiden, but overall they looked disorganized. And that's like Smith took most of the offensive staff with him.
Yeah.
That's why I put all that on Smith. How are you that fucking disorganized in your first game against FAU at home?
Right. Well, and there was a beat writer for, I think it's at Barstool, Michigan State Sports, or some publication like that, that wrote in his game recap. It's like the team looked unprepared for the game at times, and he's like, if that wasn't enough, when Michigan State was up by 16-10, had a 4th and 1 at the 7-yard line, you would think that you would kick the field goal and make it a 2-possession game. He never
kicks a field goal when you want him to kick a field goal.
No, and the way he described it was so funny. He was like, no, he didn't do that. Instead, he called the worst play call that I've ever seen in my entire life, which was a boring run up the middle, stuffed for a 2-yard loss and turnover on downs. And it was just like, oh man, I had PTSD flashbacks of them doing that at Oregon State.
I'm surprised it wasn't a fake field goal run with the Michigan State kicker. But he only does that when it's 4th and goal from the fucking 20.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. If you weren't sure he was checked out.
Sappington transferring to Oregon, I guess when he was at Oregon State, his coach made him do that. So I guess run to Eugene, where they give their athletes the ball to run with.
Right. But Childs, man, no touchdowns, 2 picks, a sack. There were some other stat lines I wanted to talk about. But yeah, he looked bad. Michigan State looked bad.
They didn't score in the
Jack Velling didn't get it. Yeah, I mean, it was so what I'm trying to say is it looked really bleak. It looked really dark in the Oregon State world for a long time. But I've been saying it on Twitter. Yo, grass isn't always greener on the other side. Like we have who we have, and that is all to say. I am so beyond excited and feel so beyond lucky that we have Gevani as our quarterback, that we have Jam and Hank as our running backs, that we have a reloaded defense, we have a reloaded receiver group. I think that this is going to benefit Oregon State. And I know it's just 1 week. It's a small sample size. But look, like some of these numbers I don't think are going to change. I think DJU will continue to struggle. Aiden is a wild card. Aiden's a wild card because Michigan State is up against it in a really stacked conference this year. And so Aiden's going to have games that he's playing against a little bit better of a defense than the Florida Atlantic Owls.
The only 2 who I think clearly flashed and like were super influential in their new digs were Easton Mascarenas-Arnold and Akili Arnold for USC, because USC's defense looked good. And it has been a long time since USC's defense has looked good.
Yeah, that is true. Silas also had a touchdown, although there were a lot of Texas players that had touchdowns on Saturday. They sort of ran away with it, but I don't know. It doesn't break me to pieces that these players that decided that Oregon State wasn't, I don't want to say wasn't good enough for them, but was convinced that Oregon State wasn't the right spot for them, are finding that maybe Oregon State was the right spot for them.
Pretty good spot.
Yeah.
Pretty good spot, I would say.
Yeah.
This parlays exactly into the first thing I wanted to to talk about after football. Though Trent Bray was asked about this, and he said, sounds about right, when he was asked by the Oregonians' Nick Daschel about Oregon State men's soccer beating Michigan State.
Yeah. So good. So good. That's right. Let's go. I mean, if I could pick a win, a draw, and a loss, I don't know if I would have necessarily picked it exactly that way. I think I'd switch Michigan and Washington, but oh man, I the win 100%. I would pick Michigan State. That's great. One other thing, I know this goes against your segue, Terry, and I'm sorry, but I do want to circle back to football and what happened down in Eugene. I do think it relates back to Oregon State because obviously we play them in 2 weeks. But the two things, I guess, on this front. One, the ironic thing is if Gevani McCoy was still playing for Idaho, Oregon would probably have a 0-1 record at this point. And two, what do you make of it? I know this is a Beavers podcast, but I do think that this is really relevant with the game coming up in 2 weeks. What do you make of that? Was that a blip on the radar? Was that a stumbling block? Looks like Terry has dropped here. I'll give you guys what my thoughts were on the Oregon game. I do think that it was a blip on the radar in the sense that I don't think that Oregon is going to drop a game or allow a game to be that close to such an inferior opponent, although I don't think that they have another inferior opponent of that caliber on their schedule. But I do think there is something to the fact that Dylan Gabriel was 41 for 49, had over 300 yards passing, and the team only mustered up 17 points in the first 3 quarters and 3 quarters of another quarter. Their inability to get the ball in the end zone is, I think, concerning for them. I granted I didn't watch the whole game, but I think that, you know, when you have a quarterback that has those kind of numbers and you put up 24 points, that has to be concerning, especially against a team that is an FCS opponent, and a game that's at home. So, you know, I think that there is some reason to be concerned down in Eugene. A lot's going to be discovered in this game against Boise State. I don't think Idaho was really able to move the ball all that well against Oregon. They had the one sort of trick play that got them the score to go to make it 14-17. And other than that, I really don't think they're able to move the ball. Boise State's not going to have that problem with their running back, who arguably is the best in the country. Oregon's going to have their hands full on the defensive side of the ball, which means they're going to need to figure out how to put it in the end zone. I do think Oregon will win this game, but if it's another really close game, I like our chances against them. So yeah, I think that, and here is Terry for the perfect segue to ask him. But yeah, I think that Oregon does have a chance to struggle against Boise State, and I think if that happens, then it opens up the door for things to get really, really interesting in Corvallis the week after. So I know you missed my whole explanation, Terry, of what I think is going to happen, or not what I think is going to happen, but my interpretation of what did happen in Eugene on Saturday. So we just went back to sort of what that means for
as I was kicked
for
out
the
of
future.
Yeah,
I mean, we did. That's what happens when you leave the fucking admin privileges to me.
Just
straight off the rails.
And I can still hear you and see you. I had the rolling rainbow ball of death here a little bit, so my computer might still be freaking out. But I mean, I knew Ashton Genty was one of the best running backs in the country. It's when a certain somebody, not a former Oregon State player, but just someone who I think was influencing a former Oregon State player, insinuated that you can't showcase that you are the best running back in a draft class without being in a major conference. I think I had something to say about that, and I think Ashton Genty has something to say about that too. I think Oregon Boise State's by far the most interesting game this weekend, and they're both common opponents. So we have a lot of reason to watch, though it is at the exact same time as our game, unfortunately. But yeah, Boise State's got a lot to bounce back from too, where they were blowing out Georgia Southern, and Georgia Southern's been a pretty good program for a number of years, but that's not how Boise State wants their defense to play. And Oregon, certainly that's not how they want their offense to play. So it'll be a pretty interesting game in Eugene, and a great scouting opportunity.
My point, Terry, was in the game against Idaho, it was interesting to see that Gabriel was 41 for 49 with over 300 yards, but wasn't able to get the ball onto the end zone. It didn't. No, their offensive, the point total.
I have not gone back and watched that game, which makes me similar to Comcast members in the Pacific Northwest who couldn't watch the game because it was blacked out. Cool new TV deal you guys got. Looks like that shit's going to happen again this weekend too. Honestly, you'll love to see it. My favorite thing that's happening right now is this bit of television karma to those that left. I know it's something that's going to get resolved at some point, and it's not anything powerful enough to be like, oh, let's just all get the 12 of us back together again in one conference based on the Pacific Coast. We could call it the Pacific 12 or Pac-12 for short, and we'll have 120 years of harmony playing each other in fun games at crazy hours. That's not happening. But fuck all of you. And also,
to listen
to, I mean, I understand that Twitter doesn't speak for most fan bases, and when you talk to people in person to cheer for other teams, you can often have very reasonable and eloquent conversations. You cannot have those things on Twitter. But for everyone who was just screaming from the mountaintops about the TV rights and how they're undeniable, and your school would have done the same thing, cry babies. And now you can't watch your favorite team who plays in the market that you live in. Oh, Benny, it's too much. Oh my God.
Oh man, they got to cope harder.
But yeah, I know a couple of them are going to be on Peacock, which is interesting as a streaming only platform. Similar.
Yeah.
What are some other streaming only platform? I know Netflix is one.
Oh, it's not orange or banana.
Is Apple
TV
what?
That's
has
it.
Apple TV
That's the one.
Act out a sporting event? I'm not sure it has.
No. Has Apple TV ever been in the room with that alluded to Pacific 12 conference and maybe offered some enticing dollar figures?
History here. But yeah, very exciting weekend ahead. I think we have talked enough, and maybe we should wrap this up before my computer explodes again, because it might. It's like the fan that's within the computer, I can tell, is on full blast right now, and the bottom like it's about to burn through my desk. And I also have a newish job, and I'm supposed to get issued a company laptop at some point, but I haven't gotten it yet. So this is a very important hunk of property for me, unfortunately. Well, thank you.
Okay, well, let's
everyone.
wrap it up then.
Thank you, Benny. Thank you, JP in the shadows, for lining this up. for listening to this, the 156th episode of the Belligerent Beavs Podcast, an undefeated edition of the Belligerent Beavs Podcast. Go Beavs, beat San Diego State. Keep doing your thing, Beaver Nation. We are in this together. We're in it forever, and we're gonna turn some heads out here before the end of the season. We just know it. Joining me on this episode of the Belligerent Beavs Podcast is the one, the only Benjamin Lawrence Sebastian Wehage, aka Benny with the Good Quaff, aka Benny Bull Game, aka Benny Blastoff, aka Benny Burner, aka Benny Bedlam, because he's fucking crazy, folks, aka Benny Scoops. You can find him all over social media at Benny L 1986 on just about every channel. Are you still on AOL Instant Messenger? Yeah, your away message is probably stuck on fuck you, Joey Harrington. How do those 5 interceptions taste, Joey
Sometimes
Harrington?
I just log in to hear the door
I
open.
miss those days, man. I wish I could ask JP to play the door opening sound, but another time, perhaps. I'm Terry Horseman, at Terry Horseman on Twitter, at Terrence Horseman on Instagram.com. Thank you to everyone who stopped by to say what up in the terrace on Saturday. You know my name is short for Terrace Horseman. Hashtag Terrace Gang or Die. Let's go. You can I already mentioned where you can follow me. You can follow the show on Twitter at Bellig Beavs and at Belligerent Beavs everywhere else. Especially YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. We're on Blue Sky. Benny, be honest. How many times have you looked at the Belligerent Beavs Blue Sky?
I'm not even sure what Blue Sky is. I know you guys talk about it every episode,
but it's there. How fun!
Yeah.
If you are a boomer sooner, check out the Belligerent Beavs Facebook, where all of our golden fans are hanging out. We are very excited for the rest of the season. Very excited to be here with you for another great season of Beaver football and to keep this train rolling. And remember that no matter what they do, no matter what they say, no matter what they take away, they cannot spell chop 'em without hope. So chop 'em.
Chop 'em. Chop 'em.
Beavs back, baby.
And a very happy birthday to the real McCoy himself.
Dope.
Happy birthday, Gevani.
I don't know how we stop recording.